So, guys, we're lacking a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary at the moment. Yeah, there is no.
There's a quorum.
Yeah, there's a quorum. There's no, specific stipulations in the bylaws about who is the presiding officer in the case where the three.
I would nominate Tom for the evening to chair the meeting. Any objections?
Let it be so. All right. And then, Tom, if you would designate someone as the acting secretary for tonight, that person will sign the minutes.
Okay, we'll go ahead. It's after 7, so we'll call the meeting to order. First on the agenda would be public comment. Anyone in the audience? Huh?
We'll start with the roll
call. Roll call?
I've noted attendance. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay. I got to go to approval of the minutes. Sorry. So we have a couple different minutes in there. June 25th. There was a study session. Anybody have any comment, changes, observations on the minutes for that Planning Commission study session?
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
I would like to amend the June 25th minutes to include in the second paragraph of page 5.
Wait a minute. Not first. Let's do the study session minutes, Bob.
Okay.
So, is anybody? The members that were present were you, Bob Hall, Josh, myself, Gordon, and Daniel. So, are there any comments from those who were there?
Chair?
Yes.
I just have one question. Is, the building is slated to be for LeMaitre's, a single story. And we didn't mention anything to them, but
Right now, what I'm asking
I thought
for
it was
is
part of the study session, no?
no. It
Okay,
was
my
not.
mistake.
So,
I'll move approval.
thank you. Seconded by anyone?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the study session minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved, or so passed. All right, now you can go on to your comments about the Planning Commission minutes from June 25th.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Bob?
With regard to the second paragraph on page 5, I would like the minutes to have the following sentence included. Hall replied that his letter only repeated facts that he had publicly stated at the prior Planning Commission meeting. I so move.
Can you read that one more time?
I'll give it to you
Okay,
in writing
thanks.
if you want. Hall replied that his letter only repeated facts that he had publicly stated at the prior Planning Commission meeting.
Any other comments, Bob? You moved on this. You want to make this one particular statement a motion? Does anyone second that?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those.
Just a question? Chair, can I have a question about that?
Yes.
So with in regards to it being one story and the overlay district there?
Wait, Dennis. Bob made a motion.
Okay,
It was seconded.
yes.
Okay, so there's
gotta
further
vote-
discussion
gotta
only
vote
on
on that.
Bob's motion, which is to include the statement that he wanted.
My misunderstanding.
Okay. So any other discussion on Bob's motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of inserting the statement as stated by Mr. Hall to correct the minutes, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Now, any other comments about the minutes? Now you can bring up your point, Dennis.
Oh, it was just a question.
Okay.
And just to try and keep with the spirit in that area, I know we're all fine with one story, but being able to offer them ideas as far as height, how do you say, enhancements, right? That's normal conversation when working with,
Yeah, and Acting Chair and Commissioner Schuler, I think that was their Lumetri's intent when you'd asked them the question if the building was one story, and they said yes, but that it was 15 feet in height. Typically, a one-story, commercial building is more like 12. So that I think that the point they were trying to make was it was a little bit grander than a typical one-story, and we will be working with them on trying to maybe get parapet walls or something on that to give the more of an appearance of bulk to it.
I'm sure you would, thank you.
My only comment on the minutes is, yes, I have been baffled for years on why we couldn't get a restaurant there. It doesn't have to be, but just to repeat, Director Stark did conclude that we had floundered in that area as well. So we were both using some interesting words. At any rate, anyone have any other comments or corrections to the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting for June 25th?
I'll move as amended.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes from June 25th, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Okay. We can move on. Since Dan is here,
We'll continue as
Okay.
you've nominated, and
All right.
Commissioner
Thank
Kitzberger was filled in.
okay. The next on the agenda would be an opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the commission on items not on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak to an item not on the agenda? Anyone in the audience? No? Seeing none, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
It's not a public hearing. You
Okay.
don't need to close it. You can just move on.
Sure, I'm overzealous. Okay, on to the agenda item, which would be item number 1, conditional use permit to allow a restaurant at 6439 Lindale Avenue. Staff report, please.
Thank you. The city has received an application requesting a conditional use permit for a full-service restaurant at 6439 Lindale Avenue. The proposed restaurant would occupy approximately 2,000 square feet of the existing strip mall, and the primary changes would be internal to the building. A tenant has not been determined, and the applicant has been made aware of the fact that there are many building and health code requirements that will have to be addressed once interior specifics are provided. Full-service restaurants with alcohol service are conditionally permitted in the general commercial C2 district, so long as the lot abuts an arterial or collector street, which this does, Lindale Avenue. In order to grant a conditional use permit, the council must find that all of the following conditions will be met. The proposed use must be consistent with the goals, policies, and objectives of the city's comprehensive plan. The 66th Street and Lindale Avenue area is designated as mixed use in the comprehensive plan. The stated intent of this designation is to focus on creating a city center in Richfield that will serve as a downtown. One of the ways in which this is to be achieved is through providing additional commercial opportunities in the area. The proposed use must be consistent with the purposes of the zoning code and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. The general commercial district is intended to provide space for a wide variety of retail and service business. The city expects these businesses to have an attractive appearance from all sides, to be compatible with nearby residential properties, to minimize adverse effects on surface waters, and to not significantly degrade the level of service or safety on nearby roads. The proposed use must be consistent with any officially adopted redevelopment plans or urban design guidelines. The mission of the Lakes at Lindale plan is to make this area Richfield's thriving urban center through upgrades to commercial properties. This proposal will utilize currently vacant space to include additional landscaping that will improve the look of the existing building. The proposed use must be in compliance with the performance standards of Section 544 of the code. This site is considered legally nonconforming. The applicant has worked to make improvements in order to approach the intent of the code where possible and practical, and staff has a number of recommendations that they would add as stipulations to this approval. I'll go through those. First, there's combination of the parcels located at 6439 and 6463 Lindale, or execution of a permanent parking agreement between the two, and that's to make sure that there's enough parking guaranteed in the future, even if ownership should change. One parcel would be, the two parcels would be guaranteed to share parking in perpetuity. Final approval of trash enclosures must be approved by the Community Development Director. Screening of all mechanical and utilitarian items must take place from all public areas. Restriping of the parking stalls and crosswalks. Provision of both accessible parking spaces and routes in accordance with the Minnesota Building Code. Final approval of landscaping plans by the Community Development Director. Any new utilities must be installed underground, and odor control is required. The applicant is aware of all these conditions, and he is here tonight if you have questions about those. The proposed use must also not have any undue adverse impacts on government facilities, utilities, services, or existing or proposed improvements. The use cannot have adverse impacts on public health, safety, or welfare. There must be a public need for such use at the proposed location. The rehabilitation and reuse of vacant buildings is an integral part of enhancing Richfield's downtown, and that's how we would find that that was met. And the proposed use must meet all the specific conditions set by the code for the granting of such permit. In terms of critical issues, staff believes that all of the necessary requirements for issuance of the conditional use permit have been met. Minor site design issues like accessible parking and routes could be addressed as part of the building permit process. If approved, the permit will remain valid for 1 year unless a building permit has been issued and substantial work completed. The applicant is also aware of that timeline. Due to an unexpected staff absence, the public hearing was not posted in the Sun Current newspaper. However, mailed notice was sent to all properties within 350 feet of the site. Because of that error, the City Council is also going to hold a public hearing regarding this proposal. That will be on August 13th. If any members of the public are here tonight to speak on it, you do not need to speak at both hearings. A summary of statements from the Planning Commission is provided to the City Council. That concludes staff's report. The applicant is here. If you have any questions for staff, I would be happy to answer them.
It is a public hearing. Would the applicant like to address the Planning Commission, please? Please. Okay. Anyone have any questions in regard to this? John, did you put a sign-in sheet there?
No.
I have Mr. Hinks's information as the applicant. Thanks.
Thank you. Bob, do you have any questions?
I'll start over. A tenant has not been determined according to the staff report. And I'm wondering how we can possibly be looking at this when we have so little information. What do you have people who have shown an interest in developing here? What kind of a restaurant would it be? Some of the characteristics of, elaborate on that, please.
Sure. I've had two I would consider serious groups that have been talking to us about putting in a restaurant. My group, HNC, which owns the building, would be somehow part of an ownership group, since both groups are expecting us to put a fair amount of our money into the property. We would do a full-service restaurant. It seems to be the consensus out of American cuisine. We'd try to cater more to a family type of restaurant. Right off the bat, we only choose to be open in the evening, say 4 o'clock, something like that, and stay open till closing time. The one consensus that we're getting from the groups that we're speaking with, it would be small pizzas, American cuisine, the kinds of things that most people are kind of looking for, pretty much. It wouldn't be a sports bar per se. There would be a couple of screens that would allow people to come and view sporting events, but that would not be the main focus. With the apartment complex going into the north, and I kind of consider that a nicer building, if you will. We'll try to cater to people such as that and just people in the general neighborhood who could, walk to a restaurant. The one group that we're talking to, they were trying to get a business located at Chicago and 45th in South Minneapolis, and they lost out to another group. And they really try to cater to families, particularly around the dinner hours, being it's a densely residential area. We're going to try to cater to those as much as we possibly can.
So you're not talking about live music or no outdoor eating?
Maybe in the future, but not right now, no. Again, the expenses on things like this are quite high, and I understand everybody's economy, financial situation is different. We've tried to entice some national chains to come in. We've talked to some people who deal with national chain restaurants, if you will, and just for numerous reasons, I never really get much of a response. So about the only thing that we're getting as far as people showing interest are groups who have either worked in the restaurant industry in and around the area or who have owned a restaurant in the Minneapolis area.
Thank you.
Anyone else questions? I do. What's the approximate square footage?
It's roughly 1,900 square feet.
Okay.
That would include the whole inside of the space. Forgive me, I'm sorry. It would be approximately 2,000 square feet because we're going to be taking some space on the back of the other locations, about 2,000 square feet, including the bathrooms and the kitchen area.
Okay. And would you anticipate, when you're saying full-service restaurant, this would be a sit-down restaurant?
Absolutely.
About how many tables would you?
Well, the tables, I don't have an answer for that. We're thinking a seating capacity of somewhere around 75 to 90, somewhere in that window, and that'd be probably on the high side.
Okay.
But that's a guesstimate right now.
Okay. How many parking places would that have to accommodate?
I don't have the parking calculations in front of me, but it's a strip center.
Right.
And so they're calculated based on the entire center. And
Okay.
in this case, it's both the center at 6439 and the one to the south. There's quite a bit of parking there. A parking study was conducted, and they were found to have adequate parking by the independent parking study.
Okay. It seems as I drove through there, the parking in front of the building was all like diagonal type parking. That's fairly small, actually. Just if you have a car driving through, there isn't much space left over for the cars to diagonally park. I thought that might be kind of difficult. And the rest of the parking is in the back.
That's correct.
So is that parking in the back also shared with everybody else as well? Are there going to have to be specific designated parking for a restaurant like this?
No, there will not be designated parking for the restaurant unless the owner would decide to do that. The city does not require that. The only thing that the city requires is that they have that parking agreement between the two parcels to make sure that there's enough parking guaranteed.
Okay. Once he selects a tenant, does that also come back to the planning commission or have to come back to the city in any form or fashion to make sure that that particular selected tenant has met all conditions, or there are additional conditions to be met?
There are many building and health code requirements. It will not come back before the planning commission because your role is to look at the land use in particular. And so you're building in here the same conditions that we would put in for any restaurant, things like odor control and that you're building those right in here. So odor control can vary. You know, if you have a Subway, obviously your odor control system is not going to be the same as if you have Champs. And so those things are built into your conditions here in the conditional use permit. The other requirements are building and health code, and those will be addressed as soon as a tenant is selected and they apply for their building permits.
Okay. And you're not anticipating any change in outside lighting or anything like that that would require any look-see from the?
Up to this point, I understand there's really nothing I need to do too much to the outside. Just we're going to do some landscaping improvements and things of that nature. But right now, with the outside will be pretty much untouched, short of what Melissa spoke about earlier.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? Dennis?
Just a quick question. Do we need to include or disclude a drive-through at this time? If that's is that any consideration?
If a drive-through wanted to go in, that would be another conditional use permit. He would need to come back and amend the conditional use permit. This does not give him permission to have a drive-through at that location.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ian, do you have any questions? No? Maureen? No? Josh? No? Bob?
One of the things along those same lines we've been talking about, are we making a theoretical approval without any knowledge of what's specifically going to be there? If it's a sit-down or a drive-through or all those, they've got different requirements. The way I hear it, one of the important things is the impact on the neighborhood, and that kind of restaurant, one of those would have a greater effect on the neighborhood than the others. And what I hear us saying is that you want tacit approval of building a restaurant of some sort there, but we're not privy to what that might be in detail. That's hard for me to. I mean, I can vote and say, yes, I'd like to see a restaurant there, but I'm a little bit concerned about the details of this and that this is something we should be voting on at this time.
Well, I think, Bob, what it is that we're looking solely at the land use. It's probably, there's a restaurant down at the other end of the building. If there were, as the tenant is selected, if that tenant has the type of restaurant that would need greater odor control, then the development department would have to review that request. And as Melissa just stated, if he selects a tenant that wants a drive-through, that would require a conditional use permit and would have to come back to the city, to the planning commission, and go through the whole route to get approval for that. So what we're being asked to do is this space appropriate for food service of some type? That is basically what we're being asked to look at. Does this fit in with the comprehensive plan? Does this fit in with the overall mixed use of the area?
Well, I would submit that it is consistent, all those things. It says it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, so that's not the question. But the question is, to me, there's a great difference between a pizza place, for example, which was one of the alternatives he mentioned, or a sit-down restaurant. And to me, I don't know that I can approve something that I don't know what's going to be there. I guess that's where I'm coming from.
He did say that he's anticipating a tenant who would include a sit-down restaurant.
He also mentioned as one of the prospects was a.
This is still a public hearing, and there's some audience members. We might want to see if anybody else wants to address.
Point of order there. Wait, so hold it. I just want to get a clarification on that. We asked for the applicant to address the planning commission. Are you through with your questions for the applicant?
Well, he's still there. If something comes up, I don't know.
Okay. Well, then, as Commissioner Ruda suggested, we can move on. Members of the audience, if you'd like to comment, this is a public hearing.
My name is Ken Fairbairn. The one thing I would add is before that other section was redeveloped, there was food service down there as well. So it seems like it would still be consistent with what was already in that area.
Okay,
So
thank you. Yes, please.
Just to address your concern, though, there would be no type of drive-through at all. That wouldn't even be an option for so many ways. When we first bought the building, we were talking to a coffee house about coming in there, and that was one of the things that we tried to see if we could get like a drive-up. It's not financially practical for us to do that. So the people that we're talking about right now, it would be no kind of a drive-in. And when I say pizza, it's kind of like those personal little pizzas that you get, but I don't want to say it's like a Champs, which you're probably familiar with, or like a Houlihan's, but something kind of on that scale, but not with the big, we're not really going the big TV route, but it would be some place where you could bring your children, sit down, have a sit-down meal, drink what you choose to drink, and again, the best I could just tell you, just from the people that we've talked to, American cuisine would be 95% probability as to that's the kind of food we'd be serving, the hamburger kinds of things. We're not going to do that malt kind of stuff, but it would be hamburgers, like personal pan pizzas, and try to incorporate some other foods. I've got some people that I know who have restaurants in South Minneapolis and in Bloomington, and they buy a lot of organic foods like that. So we might try to incorporate some of that, but that's going to be really experimental because that can get expensive real fast. So it's going to be kind of the standard stuff. I wish I could say it would be really great, but it'll be somewhere like a Houlihan's, a Champs kind of a place, pretty close to that, but not quite as many TVs as they like to push.
Okay. Dr. Stark?
Well, I just wanted to note, on the question of a specific restaurant, kind of a corollary. We do this, or you do this all the time on other kinds of uses. Just as an example, the old Kmart site, when Wellington Management was approved to do retail there, there's the LA Fitness, but then there's a 20,000 square foot retail building. We have no idea who those tenants are going to be. And there is quite a variance in the impact of one retailer to another, depending on what kinds of items they're selling. And I'm certain we've done this before with restaurants where use has been approved for a restaurant. Actually, I know that, somewhere like Kensington Park as an example. At the time Kensington Park was approved, it wasn't for Restaurant X and Restaurant Y. It was for X square feet of restaurant, carte blanche. And so I don't know that we've ever really gotten into the business of tailoring an approval for a specific restaurant, and it's not always either known or germane to the discussion.
Precisely. So, does that satisfy your curiosity, Bob?
If that's the way it is, that's the way it is.
Okay. Just to recap, when he does select a tenant, if there are some other issues with that particular tenant, their type of cuisine, odor control, so on and so forth, that comes back through your department, correct?
Yes, that comes back through the type of odor control system that's required comes through our department for approval, yes.
Okay.
And if there are other issues that would come up, if for some reason a drive-through would come up, even though he's saying it will not, that will come back before you.
Okay.
Or, hours of service that are outside of the norm or outside of what's been approved, those kinds of things.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to close the public hearing.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Okay, close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion on this particular action tonight from the Planning Commission?
Just to say that this is an exciting, vibrant area here, and I'm sure you'll have your choice of tenants. So I wish you luck.
I'm really looking for. I've told both these two, Melissa and John, what downtown Richfield is phenomenal. I mean, it's just really beautiful what's going on. That LA Fitness, the apartment complex right next door to us. A lot of the neighbors behind would come over and voice their concern about it. But now that they really see it, that's kind of one of those things that when you see the visual this fourth floor being recessed like it is, the underground parking, everybody's really pumped up about it. So I'm really looking forward to, hopefully a restaurant will kind of trying to excite people to come into the mall just a little bit more, because parking can sometimes be an issue during the daytime. The nighttime, that's what I'm trying to get somebody in there, because if you drive by that mall around 4 o'clock and there's nobody there. So that's what I'm trying to hopefully bring some more people into the building.
Okay. Any chance you can get somebody who can make fine walleye?
I'll work on that.
All
Actually,
right.
because Champs used to have really good pan-fried walleye over there, and they haven't had it for years. I'll try my best.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would move the action with the 8 items as conditional and as noted by staff.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes. Congratulations.
Thanks for your time, folks.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any new business? Okay. Any old business? We're done with the Pillsbury common actions at the moment, so that'll be our old business. Liaison reports. Community Services Advisory Commission. Chair Jabs had asked me last time about the skate park. The skate park has begun. They have excavated and they are proceeding rapidly with laying the platform for the skate park. One notable thing about the skate park is that they did some very creative exchange. The Kmart site, the LA Fitness site, needed to get rid of some fill, and the city needed to get rid of some of the excavated topsoil. One of the local sod companies hauled out the topsoil, and the Kmart site contractor hauled in the fill, and they did that with a nice exchange and discounting price. It saved the city quite a bit of money by doing that creative thinking, and Mr. Topitzhofer, I think, is the one that deserves the kudos for that. Relative to the last meeting, the Community Services Commission had a couple of questions. Oddly enough, one was about the LA Fitness site. They were concerned about whether or not it was meeting the greenery requirements, green space, shrubbery, and so on. The other question that came from the Community Service Commission was whether or not they were also meeting the requirements, and it was being monitored for wastewater runoff and so on. If either of you could comment on that, or
And we can double check on the landscaping. I don't have any reason to believe that they're not. With the wastewater, that's something that the engineering department handles, and we'll pass along the concern to them.
okay, thanks.
Can I get some
Please.
clarification? Was it that the particular plants that are being installed, that there was not enough, or that the plan itself did not
Well,
meet
obviously,
city
the site is not
requirements?
totally completed, but,
Right.
and so it was a question coming from one of the commission members whether or not the planned greenery would be adequate. And I told him I thought it was from the discussion that had been had when that passed the planning commission and so on, but nonetheless.
Right. So I guess my response to that would be, yes, their landscape plans were tentatively approved by both the Planning Commission and the council, and the final plans have been approved by staff as
Okay.
meeting, the standards are meeting the intent of standards.
Okay, I'll pass that back to them. The other question they have was a general question in regard to light pollution from all of the development around the city, in particular that site, but others as well, whether or not we have a firm policy and this development sites are being monitored for light pollution and so on. And again, I told them I thought you guys did a pretty good job of it, but again, it was a general question from that commission, and they asked me to ask it.
My response to that is the city has very strict light standards for new developments. Actually, it's one of the things that new developers have trouble meeting. It's one of the things they have the most difficulty with, parking lot lighting requirements, because they're so low. Do we monitor them once they're in? We do not. Unless there is a complaint, no one is going around the city with a light meter. But in general, our foot candle requirements for parking lot lighting are roughly 4 foot candles. And in a typical parking lot without those standards, you're going to see up to 20. So our light standards are very strict.
Okay.
And the light pollution, my understanding is most of that's governed by what they call the cutoff of the lights, the shielding to cast it down.
Mhm.
And that is something covered in our standards. And that is something we do check when it's installed. So that aspect of it, certainly when it's installed, is meeting the code.
Okay. And then they had one further question. As we are doing all this great new development around the city, and we are looking at increasing housing in particular, question was whether or not there is any movement afoot to look again at the garbage collection problems or issues that may arise with increased housing in the next decade.
And I don't know the answer to that. I'll pass along that there's continuing questions about that at the department directors meeting. That would be Recreation Services Director Topitzhofer that's been taking on that issue.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for community services. City Council? Who's doing City Council?
No update.
No update? Okay, HRA?
Last Monday was a long time ago. My recollection is there was some subordination requests, and Lametries must have been on the agenda, and I'm guessing all issues move forward based on city council action, so that's the update.
Okay, thank you. School Board, Dan?
There was a special meeting held June 28th regarding lighting at the baseball field at the high school. There was commentary from both those in support and those opposed to the project. And the school board approved or appointed a new principal for the high school.
Okay. Just to add a note to your the special meeting, they actually ended up with a 3-3 vote. So they did reconsider putting in the lights. However, the reconsideration came out staying the same. So they are intending on putting in the lights.
And just a note to the commission, in order to install those new lights at the field, the high school will need to apply for a conditional use permit. So that will be on your agenda for next month, the installation of those lights at the fields.
So they have applied for that.
They have.
Okay, thank you. Transportation Commission.
The commission did not meet up.
That's right. Their meeting, they took summer off. Gordon's not here. Chamber of Commerce. As you all know, Mr. Lindgren is resigning from the Chamber of Commerce. They are doing a search for a new president. I'd like to take this opportunity to say that I thought that Steve Lindgren, for the tenure that he has done a great job with the Chamber of Commerce. Sad to see him go. So are there any other comments? Dennis?
Sure, just to pass this on, if you can just pass that down. And it's a little bit fuzzy, but this is about the South Loop District they're working on in Bloomington. And this is right by the Mall of America there.
Okay.
This is an area we need to be keenly aware of, especially when there's projects on the table like the underpass at 77th. Highway 77. And again, participating in what is an exciting area and a worldwide destination. I see all sorts of opportunities to capitalize and our location to that. And I did turn it into Melissa as part of the
Okay, thank you.
notes.
Along those lines, do we have any has there been any update or any further movement on the underpass?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, just thought I'd ask. I do have a couple other comments that have been passed along to me. Three in particular. One is collection bins, the drop boxes that you see popping up every once in a while here and there. Is there a code or an ordinance that governs those particular boxes and their placements and so on? I didn't think so either.
That's it. Well, there are rules.
Okay.
They don't specifically govern collection boxes, but there are other rules that do apply to their
Okay.
placement. Things like the rules in the zoning code that say that you can't place things in required parking stalls.
Okay.
So if there's an excess parking stall and they have a collection box there, it could be there. If they have only the required number, it cannot. So
Okay.
that depends. There are also rules about trash and general upkeep.
Right.
And those rules come into play sometimes too when those boxes are overflowing. So
Okay.
if people have concerns about them, they can call the environmental health department or log on to the website with those comments, and we can look into it.
Okay. Another question that came to me was along the lines of collection boxes is that now the CVS does have a, a red box, the movie collection box on the outside of the building that's relatively new. It's, out, and the person that asked me asked whether or not they needed to have any kind of permission for that.
They don't need specific permission for that, again, in terms of zoning, but you do need things like electrical permits and things like that.
Okay.
I don't know specifically about CVS. I would assume that they got their permits. The other issue that comes up with the red box is making sure that you have you maintain your handicap access, that there's enough, that your sidewalk where you're placing it is wide enough to begin with to place the box on there.
Okay. This is up against the east side of their building.
We can take a look. I can see if they came in for their electrical permits. If they came in for those permits, it's the building inspections department, and they would have checked that as well.
Okay. And then the other, since the city has been so kind and wonderful, and they put in nice-looking benches in front of the West Side Liquor Store on Penn Avenue and in front of the fire station, question came to me whether or not there's a possibility that we could get rid of the billboard-type benches at bus stops.
That's been brought up in the past. And, it's kind of it's a trade-off right now. I don't think that the city gains any money from that. It's my recollection. But the residents do get a bench.
Right.
I've brought it up as my personal feeling is that they're unsightly and I'd rather not see them. The engineering department who's responsible for things being in the right of way, maybe they don't have the same delicacies I have. They're not quite as offended by them.
All right. So somebody would have to make it a pet project, in other words,
Right.
to move forward.
Somebody other than me.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other business?
I would just note that I think you all received a copy of an email that the city manager sent out regarding the housing visioning that's, I believe, tentatively scheduled for Monday, August 20th at 6. And I've heard that, maybe there's some concern that the planning commission isn't viewed as the same level of participant, and I just want to assure you that that's not the intent. As far as I know, the Planning Commission is considered an equal in that conversation. I do know that a couple of HRA members and a couple of City Council members specifically sought out the city manager to tell him the dates that they were not available, and so there was some working of the schedule to accommodate those. If any planning commission member had done the same, had said, I understand this is coming up, I'm not available on these dates, I don't doubt that the same accommodations would have been made for any of you.
Yeah. For the record, I don't think I was aware that they were actually trying to schedule that meeting. So
Okay.
I wouldn't have had an opportunity to say no or yes, one way or the other. But thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else? Any other comments? Any other business?
I move to close the meeting.
Okay, so is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Passed. Okay. Thank you.